guys, thanks for tuning in. I am going to try and tell you what I'm doing in my painting today. This is the first time I'm doing this. Pastels are something I've only been doing for a couple years, so I don't really feel comfortable teaching. But I thought I could maybe at least describe the logic behind what I'm doing. So for this painting, I am painting this young horse. He's in the photo, I think he was maybe 3 or 4 months old. And the top photo is the original, and the bottom photo is what I photoshopped it because I wanted to do something more colorful. And he's standing in front of his mother. So you really can't tell unless you know horses. It's kind of hard to tell that's a horse behind him. So I am going to try and minimize her so she's not any kind of a distraction. So right now, I am just blocking in some of the darker areas, and I'm painting on this navy blue paper. It's a Color Fix paper, and I've never painted on this color before. So you'll probably notice quite a few times where I'm using different blues and purples as I'm putting in, blocking in these darks, because they aren't showing up on the blue paper the way I pictured it in my head. So there's an example where I had to swap out that blue. And when I first started the video, there were some blue marks in the lower right corner, and that's where I was just testing out different blues. So this was a very different type of paper for me. I normally paint on white paper and do like an underpainting first, but I thought this would save me some time. But in retrospect, I don't know that I would use a paper that's colored necessarily, because I think every part of a painting has a different story to tell, and starting out with the same color through the whole thing was a little challenging. So, but I'm still working on it. I did do a sketch ahead of time to make sure that I got his features right and the proportions and everything. So I am, at this point, like I said, I'm just blocking everything in and kind of following the lines that I have from my initial sketch. That little thing in the upper left, that's actually the barn behind the horse. And I'm going to leave that pretty abstract. I don't want anything behind him to really distract from him. So a lot of this early part is putting in a lot of these darks. So I will be quiet and let you watch that for a minute until I start doing something different. All right, so here's some lights. I do go back to the darks pretty quickly, but I am trying to kind of define where that horse is behind him. And if you look closely at my photoshopped picture, she does have some green showing up in her. So I'm trying to bring in some of that green tone in her. And then I'm also trying to do some color mirroring and using it a little bit in his mane, where he's got the roots of his mane, and then the tips of his mane are catching the light, so they're pretty bright. And then the center part of his mane is darker. And you'll see as I go through this painting that I really, really, really struggled a lot with his mane because it is so floofy, for lack of a better word. And it was just really hard for me to capture it in a way that matched the rest of the painting, because the rest of the painting is more impressionistic style. I try to stay away from anything resembling realism, but that mane was just really tough. So here I'm bringing in this beautiful bright pink, and I just love how it just pops on his face. And then I am layering it over some of the other darker areas in the painting. And it's a little hard to tell, but there is a very faint line where the front of his neck is in the photo. So I was trying to capture that, and you'll see I redo it and move it several times as I go, but it's just there right now more for a reference point. And his face is deeply in shadow at the top and then on the right side of the photo. So you can't really see his, well, it's his left eye, but the eye on the right side of his face. You can't really see that. So I'm trying to blend that shadow in with the background because I didn't want that to look strange. And in the photo I'm working off of, it's kind of a seamless color across his forehead and then into his mother. So I am trying to stick with that feeling of him being in a very high contrast environment with bright brights and dark areas. So here again, I'm trying to bring in some blues. If you look at the photo, there is the darkest area is underneath his jaw and the front of his neck. And then as you go to the right side of the painting, it does get a little more of the bluer tones. So right there is where I'm trying to blend from the blue to the darker purple of his neck. And bringing in some highlighted areas. And what I found when I was working on this is that the colors that I thought would be bright enough to do his bright areas, like this purple that I'm using, were not at all bright enough. So you'll see I do try some other lighter colors, and I end up with a very pale pink to do some of these brighter areas. It actually ends up looking a little yellow. It's a little too warm. And I do go back later and cool it down a bit. But I did struggle quite a bit trying to figure out how to capture those really bright spots on his neck and his face without going to white. And unfortunately, what I'm learning is that my palette, even though I have a lot of pastels, I am missing some key colors. Like I do not have very pale cool tones. They're more in the gray side, the ones that I do have. So I need to invest in that. So here I'm bringing in that light pink, and you can see it is a little warm. It almost looks peach on his face. But it's at least letting me get these highlights in where I want them. And there I'm trying to put it in his mane, but it's not really showing up. So at some point I get to where I've really overworked that mane. Okay, so now I'm refining his ears. And this is a little Morgan colt. And in the Morgan breed, ears, having these cute tipped little ears are very prized. It's just one of the things that Morgan owners and breeders love about the breed. So I'm really trying to make sure that I capture those ears because his ears are absolutely adorable. So I'm darkening those ears, and then again I'm trying to bring in this dark shadow and blend it into that more blue that I have on the right side. And working around his muzzle is a little tough because there's that tiny sharp area where his neck meets his jawline. And, pastels are fairly large and square. And I do have mine broken, but it was hard to get up in there into that little pointed area underneath his chin without ruining the line of his face. So you saw I darkened in his eye. Just doing some more blocking. I'm not happy with this lower left. I'm not happy with his neck. I'm not real happy with his mane. So I just keep working at it. And I do work pretty light-handed. I don't push very hard on the paper. So I am able to get quite a few layers in here, which is good because as I'm not happy with it, I keep putting layer over layer. Eventually, and I don't have this video, I came back the next day and I brushed off his entire mane and redid it. And the photo that you'll see at the very end of this video is the finished painting. So you'll be able to see what his mane looked like after I brushed it off. And what I did was I put down that dark purple and then I put that bright blue over it because it seemed like I was getting that bright blue in other areas when it was over the purple. So I did that and it turned out exactly how I wanted. So again, that's another thing that I learned here. I mean, with pastels, and I guess with all paint, what it's next to will definitely affect how the color looks. But with pastels in particular, what it's on top of will affect how the color looks too. And I was noticing as I was using that blue that it looked completely different depending what was underneath it. So I slept on it at night trying to think like, how can I get that mane to be more blue without brushing it off? And then I was like, well, I can't put any more layers on it. I don't want to spray it. I thought maybe I could spray it with some fixative and then get some more layers. I thought, well, the best thing to do would be to just brush it off and redo the mane. So that's what I did. I didn't video that part, but it wasn't a lot of time. It took me maybe 10 minutes to do. So this really, really dark purple I'm using is the V100. I forget what brand it is, but it's the one that everybody likes for doing shadows. So that is the darkest area in this painting. I'm using a lot of, I just had a brain fart. I can't think of the brand. No, it'll come to me. Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. I don't save my boxes, so I can't think of it off the top of my head. I will put a link in the description. Most of my square pastels are from that brand. I do have a few Richesons that I'm using, a couple Diane Townsend. And then at the very end, and I didn't video this part again as well, I do go in with some of this Sennelier iridescent, and I do put a little tiny bit of iridescent in his mane and along the ridge of his face and in his eye. So in the final photo at the very end of the video, you'll be able to see that that some of that white is actually the iridescent from Sennelier. And you can't really tell in the photo. The only time you really see it is in person from certain angles. But it's kind of cool. I like it. I like how it adds a little sparkle. So here I'm finally really finalizing the shape of the ears. And I'm using this blue, which is going to be behind his ears, to kind of carve them out. So this is almost like when you put light holes in trees or sun holes. This is kind of similar where I'm putting the background around the thing and letting the background define the item in front of it. And he does have a poofy forelock that goes between his ears there. So that was a little interesting for me to try and capture again. Just that hair was tough for me. So now I'm back to the mane, and now I'm putting in some strokes so I can pay attention to the direction I'm going. And you'll notice his mane is getting bigger and bigger. He ends up looking like a weird Trojan horse when I'm done with this round. But I'm trying different things here. I'm thinking, okay, if I put the whole thing light and then maybe I can bring in some dark and add some depth to it. And then I can maybe flick some of this lighter color on it. And now he looks like a rock, like a punk rock star. And I'm thinking, okay, how do I blend this out? So this was a big, and now it's getting longer even. So that was I slept on this last night quite a bit and tried to think about how to fix it. So now I'm taking a little piece of foam and I'm blending. So I went through and tried to blend out some of those hairs to make them less lines, looking like lines. But now I'm undoing that as I'm going through with a very hard pastel with a sharp corner, and I was flicking some hairs in there. I didn't really like how that looked. So then I just redefined the crest of his neck because I kept losing that as I was working on it. Now I'm trying a lighter, hard pastel to just flick some hairs in there. Now I'm trying an even lighter one. So you can see I'm doing quite a bit of experimentation here. And this is why I don't feel qualified to teach any of this stuff. But hopefully you're laughing along with me and enjoying the process. I think at some point here I give up. Not yet. Oh, I'm blending again, trying to get rid of those strokes I just put in. But I'm trying not to lose that white. It's hard to blend and then also keep detail. All right, back to the face. So I had used this bright pink originally, and then I went over it with more of a reddish pink, which took away some of that brightness. So I just went and put some of that pink back in. Here I am working again on this shadow behind him, and it's slowly getting to where I like it. So now I'm putting in what I'm hoping will be kind of the final line of his neck. And I'm just touching the side of my pastel because I don't want it to be a sharp, bright line. It's not bright in the photo, and I don't want it to be distracting, but it needs to be there. And now I'm putting in the tiniest hint of his left eye. I don't even know if you can really see it, but in that dark area, I put just the faintest little white line, which is visible in the photo. Trying a different blue again, it looks like. And I'm trying to do some color echoing and put that blue in a few other spots so it makes sense. Oops, did not like that. I'm laughing to myself at how many times I keep going back to this mane. It's the smallest things that are just such a struggle. Oh, now I'm going crazy and doing like zigzaggies. I thought, well, if it's not going to work, I'm just going to make it look terrible. I didn't like the shape of that eye, and it was a little too bright, so I lightened it up. That's the fun thing I've kind of learned too, is if you have a detail like that line was a little too bright, so instead of trying to sharpen my pastel and make the line as fine and tiny as possible, I put the line on and then I take the darker color and kind of bring it along the sides of the line and just use that to thin it out. And that's worked. So here I'm using this dark purple to try and shorten his mane again, but I realized that I had too many layers on at this point and the purple wasn't even covering anything, so. Now I'm just putting some white back in there. This is a really, really soft pastel. I know I'm trying to bring in a little more brightness in some areas of his face. I'm trying to add a little bit of reflection in his eye. If you look at the picture, there isn't anything. His eye is completely black. But I was trying to make it a little more lifelike. What I ended up doing was making him look, I don't know if he looks angry or confused or something. He didn't quite look like his photo. And that's one area that I went back and also fixed when I did the mane. So the final picture is about to appear. Ta-da! So there's the final. And you can see his mane is much shorter. His eye has a nice little glint in it. And I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. So thank you for watching. See you next time.